Ifeanyi had been counting down the days to her 30th birthday like a child waiting for Christmas. For months, she'd poured her heart into planning every little detail. The perfect rooftop in Lagos with a sparkling view of the city lights, fairy lights draped like stars, soft music floating in the warm night air, and the laughter of her closest friends and family filling the space. She wanted it to be magical, the kind of night people would talk about for years. And of course, she wanted Toby there. Not just as her boyfriend, but as the man she believed she would one day marry. She'd imagined the evening over and over. The two of them taking pictures together. Him holding her close as they looked out over the city, maybe even whispering something about forever into her ear. She'd picked a dress that made her feel beautiful, the deep gold fabric shimmering under the lights. She'd even chosen Toby's outfit for him, a sharp navy suit that matched the tone of the night. Guests began to arrive just as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The energy was perfect. Friends hugged her tightly, old schoolmates laughed as they reminisced, her parents smiled proudly. Ifeanyi's heart felt full. This wasn't just a birthday, it was the start of a new chapter. She believed, deep in her soul, that tonight would be one of the happiest nights of her life. She had no idea what was coming. First, everything felt perfect. The rooftop was buzzing with chatter, the Lagos skyline glowing in the background, and music spilling softly from the speakers. But as more guests arrived, Ifeanyi began to notice something that didn't sit right. Obi was He greeted people politely, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. While she floated around the rooftop, hugging friends and laughing at old jokes, she kept catching him glancing at his phone every few minutes, his thumbs moving quickly as he typed. First, she brushed it off. Maybe there was a work emergency. He was always busy, always handling something important. But then he started slipping away, disappearing towards the far end of the rooftop or stepping inside to take calls. Each time he came back, he wore that same distracted look, like his mind was somewhere else. When she tried to loop her arm through his or pull him into a selfie, he'd give a half smile and mutter, "1 second, babe, I just need to sort this out." He didn't even notice the way her smile faltered. Guests began to notice too. "Is Toby okay?" one of her cousins asked in a low voice. "He's been on that phone all night." Ifeanyi forced a laugh, pretending not to care, but deep down her stomach tightened. This was supposed to be their night. She had imagined him by her side, not pacing around like a man with somewhere else to be. Still, she told herself not to overthink it. Maybe the surprise she hoped for was still coming. Maybe he was planning something special for later, something he didn't want her to know yet. She decided to ignore the unease building in her chest and focus on the guests. But even as she laughed and posed for pictures, her eyes kept drifting to him, to the way he turned his back when he spoke on the phone, to how quickly he pocketed it when she came near, to the tiny guilty flicker in his gaze when their eyes met. Something wasn't right. And deep down, though she wouldn't admit it yet, she could feel the night shifting in a way she hadn't planned for. Ifeanyi was in the middle of laughing with a group of her old university friends when it happened. She had just lifted her glass to toast with them when, out of the corner of her eye, she caught a movement near the balcony. At first, she didn't think much of it. The city lights were glittering, people were taking pictures, couples were leaning over the railing to enjoy the view. But then her gaze settled, and the smile froze on her face. There was Toby, standing at the edge of the balcony with his back partly to her. And in front of him was a woman in a striking red dress. Kemi. Even from a distance, Ifeanyi recognized her. She'd seen her at a few events before, always with that bold smile, the kind of woman who walked into a room like she owned it. But it wasn't the dress or the confidence that made Ifeanyi's chest tighten. It was the fact that Toby was leaning in, his hand on Kemi's waist, their lips locked in a kiss, right there in plain view at her birthday party. For a moment the world went quiet. The music still played, but in Ifeanyi's ears it sounded far away. Someone near her gasped loudly, and that was all it took. Heads turned, conversations stopped, and the sound of disbelief rippled across the rooftop like a wave. Phones appeared in hands. Guests looked at each other with wide eyes, whispering her name. Ifeananya stood rooted to the spot, her heart pounding so hard it felt like everyone could hear it. She wasn't sure if she should walk over, scream, or just disappear. But she didn't move. On the balcony, Toby seemed to realize too late that they had been seen. He pulled back quickly, his face pale, glancing around as if searching for an excuse. Kemi didn't look ashamed. If anything, she smirked, brushing her hair back like nothing had happened. Ifeananya felt something shift inside her. Not tears, not rage, but a deep, cold calm. Her birthday night had just taken a turn no one could have predicted, and she knew every single person here would remember this moment for the rest of their lives. The rooftop felt like it had been dropped into a bubble. No sound, no movement, just 100 pairs of eyes darting between Ifeananya, Toby, and Kemi. Even the Lagos breeze seemed to pause. Everyone was waiting for the explosion. They expected shouting, a slap, maybe a drink thrown in someone's face. This was the kind of drama people only saw in Nollywood movies, and now it was happening live, right in front of them. But Ifeananya didn't give them the scene they were bracing for. She blinked once, twice, like she was shaking off the moment, then lifted her chin and smoothed her dress. Her lips curved into a smile so controlled it almost scared people. "Thank you everyone for coming tonight," she said, her voice clear and steady, carrying easily over the music. A few guests exchanged glances. Was she pretending nothing had happened? She kept talking, moving slowly through the crowd like the perfect hostess. "It means so much to have all the people I care about in one place." Her eyes briefly landed on Toby. He looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him. Kemi, on the other hand, seemed suddenly uncomfortable under the weight of all the stares. Ifeanyanya's smile widened just a little, but there was steel behind it. "Later tonight," she added, "I have something very special to share with all of you. Something I've been waiting for the perfect moment to announce." The guests murmured, their curiosity piqued. Was she talking about a proposal? A pregnancy? Nobody could tell, but the shift in her tone was undeniable. She wasn't broken. She wasn't even shaken, at least not on the outside. The music picked up again, though the energy had changed. People still whispered behind their wine glasses, but Ifeananya moved through the room as if nothing could touch her. She laughed at jokes, posed for photos, and made sure every guest had a drink in hand. And all the while she kept that secret glimmer in her eyes. A silent promise that the night wasn't over yet, and when her special moment came, it would be one they'd never forget. The party kept moving, but it wasn't the same. The music was still playing, the lights were still twinkling over Lagos, but the air had changed. Guests were no longer just talking about old times or the view. They were whispering. Little clusters formed around the rooftop, friends leaning in close, hiding their mouths behind wine glasses. Some tried to be discreet, others didn't bother. Everyone had seen what happened, and everyone had an opinion. A few stole glances at Toby, who was now glued to one corner of the rooftop, looking like he wanted to melt into the wall. Kemi had vanished somewhere inside, but her red dress still seemed to haunt the room like a loud echo. One of Ifeanyanya's closest friends, Ada, pulled her gently aside. "Babe, let's just end this. We can take everyone out somewhere else or go home. Just don't do this here." Her eyes were full of worry, like she expected Ifeananya to crack at any second. Another friend chimed in. "You don't have to keep smiling for these people. We all saw what happened. It's okay to shut this down." But Ifeananya only smiled, the same calm, almost unsettling smile she'd worn since the balcony moment. "End the night." "No," she said softly. "Why would I do that? We've only just begun." That answer made her friends exchange looks. They couldn't tell if she was in shock, playing some long game, or had simply lost it. But one thing was certain, she wasn't broken. She was in control. Toby, however, was not. Every time their eyes met across the room, his jaw tightened, and his fingers twitched like he wanted to check his phone but didn't dare. Her calmness was getting to him. She wasn't yelling, she wasn't crying, and that was worse. Much worse. The whispers grew louder as the minutes passed. People were now openly wondering what her special announcement would be. Some thought it was going to be about her and Toby, maybe even a breakup in front of everyone. Others thought she might just ignore it all and pretend. But Ifeanyi knew exactly what she was doing. The night was hers, and before it ended, every single person here, especially Toby, would understand why she hadn't walked away. The lights dimmed slightly, and for a moment, the rooftop fell quiet except for the soft hum of the city below. Then, from the far end of the room, the staff began rolling in the cake. And not just any cake. It was a towering 3-tier masterpiece covered in gold accents, white sugar flowers, and glittering candles that flickered like tiny stars. Gasps and claps broke out as it was wheeled to the center of the rooftop. Ifeanyi stood tall beside it, her gold dress catching the light like molten sunshine. Her smile was warm, but there was a spark in her eyes that only a few people noticed, the spark of someone who knew the real show was about to start. "Wow," she said, her voice smooth and steady. 30 years of life, and I get to celebrate with the people who matter most." She let her gaze sweep over the crowd. Her parents, her old friends, colleagues, and yes, even Toby, who was now standing stiffly at the back, avoiding her eyes. "I just want to thank you all for being part of my journey," she continued. "Every single person here has played a role in shaping the woman I am today. And because of that, I have something for you. A little gift before I make my birthday wish." A ripple of curiosity moved through the guests. A gift. At her own birthday. Phones were already up, recording. The earlier whispers about her special announcement had the air buzzing again. Even the staff stopped what they were doing to listen. Toby shifted uncomfortably, his hands in his pockets, his eyes darting between her and the cake. He looked like he wanted to speak, but didn't dare interrupt. Ifeanyi placed her hands gently on the cake table, leaning forward just slightly. "Tonight isn't just about me turning 30, she said, her voice carrying over the rooftop. "It's about stepping into a new chapter. And trust me, this chapter is going to be unforgettable." The candles danced in the soft breeze, the crowd holding its breath. Whatever was coming next, they knew it was going to be big, and Ifeanyi was loving every second of the suspense. Ifeanyi straightened her back, letting the moment stretch just long enough for everyone's curiosity to peak. The city lights shimmered behind her. The giant cake stood like a golden crown in front of her, and every single guest had their eyes locked on her. "In the past year," she began, her tone calm but commanding, "I've been working on something very important, something I kept private, even from the people closest to me." She let her words linger, watching as some guests leaned in, already recording on their phones. She glanced briefly at Toby. His jaw tightened, his posture stiff. "2 days ago," she continued, "I signed the final documents. As of this morning, I am now the majority shareholder of Zenith Tech." A wave of gasps swept through the rooftop. A few people even clapped without thinking, then paused, unsure if they should keep going. Others just stared in shock. She didn't stop. "For those who don't know," she said, her eyes still on Toby, "Zenith Tech is where Toby works. Which means..." She let the silence hang like a drum roll. "As of today, I'm his boss." The reaction was instant. Laughter, applause, shouts of "no way" filled the air. Some guests covered their mouths in disbelief. Others turned to look at Toby, who was now frozen in place, his face pale under the warm rooftop lights. The videos were already being sent to group chats, captions forming before she even finished speaking. Ifeanyi smiled, the kind of smile that came from victory, not spite but satisfaction. "So yes," she said lightly, "tonight is about my birthday. But it's also about celebrating new beginnings. For all of us." The crowd erupted again, some cheering her name, others raising their glasses in her honor. Toby didn't move. He just stood there, trapped in the center of a storm he had no control over, every camera catching his expression in perfect detail. Ifeanyi didn't look away from him as she picked up the cake knife. "Shall we make a wish?" she asked, her voice sweet and smooth. The guests roared their approval, but Toby knew. The real wish had already come true, and it wasn't his. The moment the words left Ifeanyi's mouth, the rooftop exploded. Gasps shot through the crowd, followed by loud laughter, clapping, and even a few whistles. It was the kind of reaction that rolled through in waves. One person would react, then another, and soon the whole place was buzzing with shock and excitement. Phones were held high, recording every second. Someone yelled, "Boss lady!" and the crowd cheered even louder. You could feel the energy shift completely, from awkward tension to electric celebration. Kemi, who had been standing quietly near the indoor lounge since the balcony incident, suddenly became the most uncomfortable person in the room. The stares started landing on her, sharp and unrelenting. She grabbed her clutch, forced a tight smile, and slipped away toward the elevator, her red dress swaying behind her like a retreating flag. Not a single person stopped her. Meanwhile, all eyes kept drifting back to Toby. His face was pale, his lips pressed into a thin line. He looked like someone had just pulled the ground from under him. Only now, the reality of his mistake seemed to hit. Not just the public humiliation, but the fact that the woman he'd just betrayed was now in control of his career. Ifeanyi didn't gloat. She didn't even look smug. She simply stood there, radiant, letting the cheers wash over her. That calm, unshakable grace only made the moment sting more for Toby. Some guests were laughing so hard they had to hold on to each other. Others kept shaking their heads in disbelief. "Only in Lagos," someone muttered. "Only here will you see this kind of plot twist." By now, the videos were already on Instagram, Twitter, and WhatsApp groups. Hashtags were forming, memes were being born in real time. The night wasn't even over, but Ifeanyi's story had already started trending. Toby stayed rooted to the spot, avoiding every phone pointed his way. But he couldn't escape the truth. The whole city would know by morning. And for the first time that night, he realized there was nothing he could say, nothing he could do to turn this around. The power had shifted completely, and it wasn't coming back. The rooftop was still buzzing from the "I'm his boss" bombshell when Ifeanyi raised her hand for quiet. The music faded, the chatter dimmed, and all eyes returned to her. She stood with a cake knife in one hand, her champagne glass in the other, glowing under the string lights. "I almost forgot," she said with a small laugh, like she was about to share a casual afterthought. "There's one more thing." The crowd leaned in. Even Toby, who had been staring at the floor, looked up nervously. She set the glass down and continued, "Tomorrow morning I'm flying to Zanzibar, alone." A ripple of murmurs moved through the guests. She smiled. "That's right, no +1. Just me, myself, and a week of peace and fresh ocean air." Some guests chuckled, others clapped. But she wasn't done. "And since I'll be relaxing on a beach, I won't have time to deal with unnecessary stress." She reached under the cake table and pulled out a crisp white envelope. Toby's eyes narrowed. She walked toward him slowly, the crowd parting like a scene from a movie. Phones were up again, people whispering, "No way. Is this what I think it is?" She stopped right in front of him, her gold dress shimmering under the lights, and handed him the envelope. "This," she said clearly, "is your official termination letter. Effective immediately." The crowd gasped, then erupted. Some clapped wildly, others shouted, "Finish him!" while laughter bubbled through the rooftop. Toby stood frozen, the envelope in his hand. His face drained of all color. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Ifeanyi didn't wait for a reaction. She simply turned, walked back to the cake, and raised the knife with a bright, effortless smile. "Now," she said, "let's eat." The cheering started again, even louder this time. The energy was pure chaos. Half birthday party, half live drama, and everyone knew they were witnessing the most legendary birthday in Lagos that year. Toby, still holding the envelope, slipped quietly toward the exit. The night wasn't his anymore. It belonged entirely to Ifeanyi, and she had just made sure he would never forget it. After the final blow, the mood on the rooftop completely transformed. Whatever awkward tension had lingered was gone. The music came back louder, laughter spilled across the space, and people danced under the Lagos night sky like they just witnessed history. Because they had. Ifeanyi moved through the crowd with ease, hugging friends, taking selfies and clinking glasses. Guests kept telling her, "You're a legend. And only you could pull this off." She laughed, but inside she felt a deep, quiet pride. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming her moment, her dignity, and her future. The cake was sliced, champagne flowed, and the DJ turned the rooftop into a dance floor. Nobody was talking about Toby anymore. Nobody cared where Kemi had gone. The only name on everyone's lips was Ifeanyi's. By the time midnight hit, the videos of her announcement and the handover of the termination letter were already everywhere. Instagram reels, Twitter threads, WhatsApp statuses. Hashtags like #BossLadyIfe, #ZanzibarVibes, and #BirthdayRevenge were trending across Nigerian social media. Memes had started, some showing her holding the envelope like a trophy. People online who had never met her were calling her a queen, the definition of grace under fire, and the woman every girl needs to channel. She had become more than just the birthday girl. She was now a symbol of independence, strength, and quiet power. As the night wound down, Ifeanyi stood at the edge of the rooftop, looking out at the glittering city. She knew tomorrow she'd be on a plane, starting a week in Zanzibar with nothing but the ocean and her peace. But tonight belonged entirely to her, and it would be remembered for years.